The ghost didn't just appear, it followed. Across states, across years. At Paranormal M, we trace the path of fear. Subscribe. Don't break the chain. The thing wearing my dog's eyes. This happened just last night. I don't even know how to explain it, but I can't stop replaying it in my own head. I live in a small town in northern Sweden, right on the edge of the woods. Our house backs up directly into the forest, and growing up I always loved it. I'd spend hours out there in the summer, and even in the winter when it was dark early. I never felt uneasy, but lately though, something about it has been different. The woods don't feel the same, they feel heavy. Anyway, last night I went outside around 11 to smoke. My dog, Rex, followed me like he always does. Nothing unusual there, he sniffed around a bit while I stood in the back step. When I called him back though, he didn't come. Normally he listens right away, but this time he just bolted toward the tree line. I didn't want to go chasing him into the dark, so I just whistled, and that usually works better than yelling his name anyway. The whistle, it echoed in the stillness, made me feel weirdly exposed, like something else might hear it too. But sure enough, a minute later Rex came tearing back out of the woods. He ran straight past me into the house like he was spooked. Didn't think too much about it until this morning. My dad told me Rex was acting strange, trying to pick a fight with another dog in the trail. And he's never been aggressive. Later refusing to get into the lake even though swimming is his favorite thing in the world. Dad said he just stood at the shore and was whining. And then I noticed something else. When I woke up, Rex was lying in front of my bedroom door. He never does that. He usually sleeps in the living room by the radiator. Tonight, that's when it got real bad. I was in bed and I was scrolling my phone and I heard scratching and ruffling at my door. It wasn't loud, more like insistent, like something trying to get in. I assumed it was Rex wanting to sleep in my room, but it set me on edge. A few minutes later, I got up to use the bathroom. The hall light was off, and when I opened the door, Rex was just standing there. He was perfectly still and staring at me. And his eyes, I can't even describe it properly. Normally his eyes are soft, brown, and warm. But in that moment, they looked wrong. Too wide, too much white showing. Like he wasn't blinking. I froze, just staring back at him. We held eye contact for what felt like forever, and then, so slowly it gave me chills. He lowered himself into a sitting position, still staring. And something in me snapped. I rushed back to my room and slammed the door shut. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely lock it. Been trying to convince myself it was just me freaking out over nothing. Maybe his eyes just looked strange because of the hallway light. Maybe I was overtired. But the way he sat down, so deliberate, like a person mimicking what a dog should do, it felt off. In the forest. That's the part that bothers me most. I used to love it. And now even thinking about walking into those trees makes my chest feel tight. I don't know if something followed Rex back out of the woods last night, or if I'm just losing it. But I swear, when I looked into his eyes in that hallway, it didn't feel like I was looking at my dog anymore. Has anyone else experienced something like this, where an animal you know inside and outside suddenly feels not right? Like something else is looking back at you through their eyes. Yeah, kinda. The night my dad came home early. I don't really tell this story much because people either laugh it off or get way too freaked out. But it's one of those memories that's burned into me. I grew up in a little fishing village. It's outside of Cebu City in the Philippines. Back then, the power went out all the time, especially during storms. My grandparents always said our town was thick with spirits because of all the old beliefs and rituals people still practiced. And even as a kid, I kinda believed it because I saw things. Not always, but often enough that I knew it wasn't my imagination. This one night, I must have been about 6. There was a huge storm, like a typhoon-level amount of rain and wind. Lightning kept flashing through the slats in the windows, and the whole house shook with the thunder. The power was out, so the only light was from a little emergency lamp in the corner, and the faint moonlight slipping through the storm clouds. I woke up in the living room because of the thunder, and I remember sitting on the wooden couch. I was clutching a pillow, and I was trying not to cry. I heard this dog howling somewhere outside. We didn't have a dog, and none of the neighbors nearby did either. It didn't sound right. It sounded too drawn out, like something imitating a dog, but not quite getting it right. That's when I heard my dad's voice call from the bedroom. It was sort of soft, like, "Anak, come here." I bolted for the room because whenever I got scared as a kid, I always curled up between my parents. I remember sliding the door open and seeing my mom on the bed half asleep, but no dad. I called out for him, stepping further inside. And then, behind the door, I saw him. Except it wasn't him. It was tall, like too tall, taller than the doorway itself, and it bent down slightly as if trying to fit inside the frame. And it was smiling. Not a normal smile. The mouth stretched so wide it reached up, like toward the ears. Too many teeth showing. "You found me," it said in my dad's voice. I didn't even feel afraid at first. I was just a little kid and thought maybe we were playing some kind of a game, like hide and seek in the dark. And this thing touched my shoulder with a hand that felt cold and too heavy, then guided me toward the bed. I climbed in, laid down between it and my mom, and I fell asleep like it was the most normal thing in the world. The next morning, sunlight was pouring in. Woke up to my mom tidying the room, and Dad wasn't there. I asked where he went. She said, "Your father's been in Manila for work the last 2 days. He comes back tonight." I didn't tell her what happened, not then. I didn't tell anybody until I was 16 or 17, and I was old enough to realize that what I'd seen wasn't just my imagination. Looking back now, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone into that room. Or worse, what would have happened if I hadn't woken up the next morning. Anybody have something take the shape of somebody you love because whatever that thing was, it wanted me to believe it was my dad, and I did. Trapped in the loop. I've been debating posting this. I don't want to sound like I've completely lost it, but reading some of the stuff here made me feel a little bit less alone. For me, it started about 4 years ago when I was living in a crappy rental near the river in Eugene, Oregon. First time it happened, I thought it was just a nightmare, but it turned into this thing that keeps coming back. It was one of those false awakenings, I guess you'd call it. I woke up to my own bed in my exact room. Everything in the right place. The blanket bunched at my feet, the string of LED lights on the wall, the faint hum from the fridge down the hall. Everything was normal. My girlfriend at the time was sleeping beside me. I asked her, "Am I awake?" She said, "Yeah," and I believed her. But then it looped. I woke up again, same setting, same question. "Am I awake?" But this time her tone was off. She looked like her, but her energy was wrong and dark and cold, and she snapped at me. Third time I woke again, same room, same scene. But now she wasn't even pretending to be her anymore. She lunged at me. The face was hers, but it wasn't her. It felt like something was inside her skin. I jolted awake for real and crying with my heart racing. I've had bad dreams before, but this was something else entirely. Happened again a year later. I realized mid-dream that I was dreaming, so I stopped doing what the quote-unquote people around me wanted. like they were trying to funnel me into this script. Go here, say this, don't wander off. But I ignored it, and that's when they turned on me. I kept looping awake, one fake morning after another fake morning, and each time the characters in the dream got more hostile. The last one was my ex, somebody I hadn't seen in years. They showed up and tried to corner me, and I yelled at him, and "You can't hurt me, this is a dream." And his voice, God, it still makes me shiver. It dropped into this guttural growl. "If you don't want to play the game, then get out." And that's when I snapped awake gasping. A few months ago, it escalated further. My mom shut up in my room, but she lives 5 hours away in Portland, so I knew it wasn't really her. The energy rolling off of her was evil, not scary like Boo, but this suffocating, malevolent heaviness. I panicked and I prayed out loud in the name of Jesus, protect me and banish this. Then each time I woke up, it reset with different family members showing up, like my brother and my cousins, but none of them were them. My brother even looked at me blankly when I asked if he knew that we were in a dream. I asked if he believed in God, and he turned back and in this horrible, distorted voice said no. The last week has been hell. The loops won't stop. 4 or 5, sometimes more in one night. I'll notice little things are off, like too many necklaces around my neck or my cat sitting on the bed when he's actually staying with my dad across town. I'll hear someone trying to break in through the front door and hear the knob rattle. Footsteps on the porch. Once it was knocking sharp, like real enough that I actually woke up and went to check the door. No one was there. The worst part, I don't know where the dream ends and reality begins. Sometimes I wake up and I'm afraid to even move because I don't trust it's real. I'll sit there staring at the door waiting to see it shift again. I don't know what this is. Sleep paralysis or demons. Just my brain frying itself from stress. All I know is every time it happens, I come out of it feeling like I've been toyed with. It's wearing me down. So I'm dealing with repeated false awakening loops, especially the ones where people in the dream seem to be aware of you, like they're mad you're not playing along. That's what scares me the most. These things don't feel like dreams, they feel like something else trying to keep me trapped. I get that in real life a little bit. The man on the top of the dresser. This happened to me when I was around 6, and even though I'm 28 now, I can still see it in my head like it was last night. Back then, we lived in a small duplex in Joliet, Illinois. That place has been coming up a lot recently. My parents' room and mine were basically connected, like not one big room, but the walls were so thin I could hear them snoring or talking if I pressed my ear against it. My room had this big wooden dresser shoved in the corner with a tiny TV on top and stacks of VHS tapes. One night I woke up out of nowhere, definitely past midnight because everything was dead silent except for the fridge humming in the kitchen. Rolled over in the bed and my eyes landed on the dresser. And there he was, a man, or at least the shadow of one, squatting right on top of my dresser, knees tucked up like a gargoyle. He was staring directly at me. Thought it was my dad and actually smiled and whispered, "Dad, what are you doing?" I even laughed a little because it looked so ridiculous, like he was trying to hide from me or play a prank. Then I realized something. My dad was asleep in the other room. I could hear him snoring through the wall. I sat up in bed, still pointing at it when my mom stirred awake. She asked what I was giggling about, and I told her, "It's Dad, he's sitting on the dresser." She looked over and froze. I'll never forget the way her face changed. She didn't see it, but the way I was describing it clearly freaked her out, and she just whispered, "That's not Dad," and jumped to turn on the light. The second she flicked the switch, the shadow bolted. That's the only way I can describe it. It shot upward like climbing into the air and vanished into the corner near the ceiling where the closet met the wall. Gone. My mom ran over and hugged me while I was still trying to process what I'd just seen. She didn't even try to explain it to me right then. The next morning over breakfast, she told me it might have been my grandfather. He died before I was born, sometime in the early 90s. She said maybe he was just watching over me, that sometimes spirits visit kids because they're more quote-unquote open. I wanted to believe her, but even as a kid I thought, why would my grandpa crouch like some kind of gargoyle on my dresser and then run away the second the lights came on? That didn't feel like watching over me. And to this day, I don't know what it was. I only know I saw it, and I know the way my mom reacted means she believed something was there too, even if she couldn't see it. I swear whatever that was, it wasn't my dad, and I'm not convinced it was my grandpa either. The shocks before sleep. This started happening to me maybe 2 years ago. Still freaks me out every time, though. I was living in a rented place in Asheville, North Carolina. It was a small bedroom apartment above this coffee shop on Merriman Avenue. Life was normal, work and gym, and scrolling TikTok until I passed out. Nothing dramatic. But one night, while I was nodding off, it hit me for the first time. It felt like a surge of electricity ran straight through my body. Not painful exactly, but sharp like every nerve lit up at once. My whole body jerked like when you dream of falling. Except it wasn't a dream, I was fully aware. It only lasted a few seconds, but it left me wide awake, and at first I brushed it off, figured maybe it's just stress or my body twitching while falling asleep. But it started happening more. Once a week, then a couple of times a week, and always while I was laying down, usually when I was just on the edge of sleep. The way it happens is so sudden, like something passes through me. It's the only way I can describe it. I don't hear anything, but I feel it, the sharp wave moving through me, and my body reacts without my permission. Arms jerk and legs twitch. Sometimes my teeth even clench. It's not just physical. In those few seconds, I feel hyper-aware, like every sound in the room gets louder, every shadow sharper. It's like being yanked from half asleep into this overcharged state. The worst was last winter. Happened 3 times in a row, maybe within 5 minutes. And each time it hit, my whole body jolted harder. And after the last one, I was left tingling like pins and needles, but deeper, almost in my bones. My chest felt heavy too, like somebody was pressing down on it. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, wondering if I was about to die. And the thing is it never leaves me with anything bad, no lingering pain, no illness, nothing like that. Just the fear and the memory of it. And sometimes, strangely, almost a calmness afterwards, like I've been drained of something. I've tried to figure out what triggers it. It doesn't seem tied to caffeine or stress or lack of sleep. I eat okay and I exercise. I don't take meds. The only thing I noticed was it got worse around the time I started meditating regularly. I don't know if that's connected or if it's just a coincidence. When I told my mom about it, she laughed and said it was just nerves misfiring. But when I told my roommate at the time, he got all serious and said he thought it sounded more like something passing through you, and that stuck with me. Honestly, that's exactly how it feels, like I'm not alone for those few seconds. Anybody experience that? Those sharp, sudden jolts before sleep that feel less like a dream and more like something brushing past you? I'm trying not to spiral, but every time it happens, I get this creepy thought in my head. What if it's not just my body? The night Mrs. O'Malley changed. This is a story my mom used to tell me about, something she witnessed when she was a kid growing up in Lowell, Massachusetts in the late 60s. It always creeped me out, and honestly, it still gives me the chills even though I've heard it a dozen times. so my mom would have been around 8 or 9 at the time. She lived on a little street where all the families knew each other. Row houses with tiny backyards and laundry lines strung between porches. Next door to her family lived a woman named Mrs. O'Malley. She was in her early 40s maybe, with 3 kids. 2 little girls that my mom sometimes played hopscotch with, and a son who was a soldier in Vietnam. According to my mom, Mrs. O'Malley was always nervous, and back then there wasn't emails or cell phones, just the occasional letter that might arrive weeks late if it arrived at all. Every day she'd check the mailbox like her life depended on it. My mom said she'd seen her pacing the porch sometimes, just chain-smoking, waiting for the mailman. One afternoon, my mom was over at their house. They were sitting in the kitchen, little girls playing with dolls while Mrs. O'Malley stirred something on the stove. Mom said she kept muttering to herself, he's okay, he has to be okay. My mom didn't really understand it at the time, but she remembered the way the air felt heavy in that kitchen, like everyone was holding their breath. Then the weird part. The very next morning, when my mom saw her again, she swore Mrs. O'Malley looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. Her face was drawn, deep lines around her mouth. Her skin was pale and ashy. And the most shocking thing was her hair had gone gray at the roots. Not a few strands, but whole sections. My mom said even as a kid she could tell something had happened. A few days later, the men in uniform showed up at the house. Everyone on the street knew what that meant. Her son had been killed in action. My mom always said the strangest thing about it was that Mrs. O'Malley seemed to know before the news arrived, like her body carried the grief before the letter even made it to her door. Think about that a lot, how sometimes people sense things so strongly it manifests physically. My mom swore up and down she wasn't exaggerating, that she saw it with her own eyes. One day the woman looked normal. The next she looked shattered, like all life had been drained out of her before she even got the official word. Do you think it's possible grief can strike before the actual news does, like some kind of psychic connection, or maybe her body just couldn't hold the stress anymore and it broke all at once? Either way, the image stuck with my mom her whole life, and now it's stuck with me too. These are written suspiciously, without errors. The voice that wasn't my mom. This happened literally last night. I still feel a little sick about it. I live in Spokane, Washington, in a small 2-bedroom apartment with my boyfriend. Our cat Milo sleeps at the foot of the bed every single night. He's lazy as hell, but also super alert when it comes to certain sounds. Like he can be passed out, but if he hears my mom's voice on speakerphone, he perks up instantly. And that'll matter in a second. Anyway, it's around 2:15 a.m. I've been tossing and turning, not fully asleep and not fully awake either. Like that weird twilight state where you're aware of the room but kind of drifting. I rolled over, pulled the blanket up, and that's when I heard it. Clear as day from the kitchen. My mom's voice calling my name. She lives on the other side of town. No reason she would have been in my apartment. No spare key, nothing. At first, I brushed it off, told myself it was just a dream bleeding into wakefulness. I sat up halfway, looked toward the door, and of course there was nothing. So I shook it off and laid back down. Not even 30 seconds later, I heard it again. Louder this time. Same voice, same tone. My mom calling my name from the kitchen. And that's when my whole body went cold, because I knew I wasn't asleep anymore. My heart was racing, but I kept telling myself, okay, maybe a dream echo or something weird in my brain. Except Milo didn't move at all. My cat, who always reacted to her voice, didn't even flick an ear. He just stayed curled up dead asleep. Then it hit me. The worst chills I've ever had in my life. Full body, every hair standing on end. I felt this crushing heaviness in my chest, like someone was right behind me, leaning over me and watching. couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't. I just clutched the blanket and pressed my hand against Milo, hoping if something was in the room, it wouldn't touch me while I was holding him. I kept whispering in my head that this isn't real, and this isn't real, and you're imagining it. It lasted 2 minutes, but it felt like forever. But finally, the feeling eased up, and I eventually drifted off again. Thought it was the worst, most restless sleep I've had in months. This morning, I almost convinced myself it was nothing, just stress or a dream I couldn't shake. But I wear a Fitbit to track my sleep, and when I checked, it logged me as awake at the same time it actually happened. Usually, those twilight states show up as light sleep, so the fact that it flagged it as being fully awake, well, that's what pushed me over the edge. I told my boyfriend, and he brushed it off at first. Then when I explained it again, slower, he actually went pale. He told me not to say the word for what I thought it might be. He's superstitious and says naming things invites them in, but I think you can guess what's in the back of my mind. The thing is, I don't live anywhere near the Appalachians or anywhere that thing is supposed to be. So part of me feels ridiculous even thinking it. But whatever it wasn't my mom, and it wasn't my imagination either. Has anyone else had something mimic a loved one's voice before? Because hearing her name, that was me messing up. Because hearing her call my name like that in a place she couldn't possibly be was honestly one of the most terrifying things I've ever experienced. The shadow behind the curtain. This happened to me when I was a kid, and even though it was years ago, I can still picture it like it happened last night. I grew up in a town outside of Veracruz, Mexico. Back then, blackouts were super common, especially in the summer. Whole streets would just go dark for hours, and everybody had to rely on candles or flashlights. It wasn't even a big deal for the adults, but for me, though, being like 7 years old and terrified of the dark already, it felt like the end of the world every time the power went out. One night, the lights cut out like usual. My dad headed down the street to this corner store where the guys would play dominoes. The place had a generator, so it stayed lit even when the rest of the block was dark, and my mom stayed home with me. It got late, and she told me I needed to take a bath. I hated bathing during blackouts. The bathroom had no window, just this heavy old curtain that covered the doorway. With no electricity, it was pitch black, except for a single candle she placed on the edge of the sink. I was in there with the candlelight flickering, already nervous, when my mom suddenly said that she had to run down to the store to talk to my dad. She told me she'd be back in a few minutes just to finish up. So now it's just me, alone, naked, and wet, and standing in this dim little bathroom with one candle. That's when I felt it, a breeze. Not strong, but just enough to make the flame bend. There's no windows open and no draft, and the air felt heavier too, like the room itself was pressing in. Then the curtain moved. At first, I thought it was just the breeze again, but then I saw it, a shape blacker than the darkness around it, tall, standing right behind the curtain. I froze, and I remember holding my breath, convinced if I stayed still, it wouldn't notice me. But the shadow stayed, almost like it was waiting. Finally, I snapped. I grabbed the first thing I could, a wooden brush, and I think it started screaming, or I did. It said, "Go away and get away from me," and I was crying so hard I could barely see. I was pounding the side of the tub with the brush, yelling loud enough for the whole neighborhood. One of my neighbors must have heard me, because she came over and peeked through the little bathroom window from outside. She asked me what was wrong, and between sobs I told her there was something or someone behind the curtain. She told me to stay put and kept talking to me through the window until my mom came rushing back a few minutes later. By the time they pulled the curtain, nothing was there, and I don't know if it was my imagination or fear playing tricks on me or something real, but I swear I know what I saw, or at least what I felt. The curtain wasn't just moving, something was standing there. And to this day, it's one of the most terrifying moments of my life. And what gets me is that feeling, that presence, like the dark itself was alive and waiting for me to notice it. Has anybody else ever seen something like that during a blackout? Something that feels more solid than just shadows, because even now, if the lights go out unexpectedly, I can't stand near a curtain. It takes me right back to that night. The house that knocked back. When I was about 14, my family moved into this weird little semi-detached house in Leicester on a road called Aylstone Lane. We never knew anything about its history. Landlord didn't say much beyond, been in the family for a while. But from the first week it just felt off, and the first thing I noticed was the knocking. Only happened a few times, but both me and my younger sister heard it on separate nights. Always between 2 and 4 a.m., and always the same. 2 or 3 knocks right in our bedroom windows. We were on the 2nd floor, mind you. No trees brushing against the glass. No way for somebody to reach unless they had a ladder. The first night I froze in bed, staring at the curtains like if I pulled them back I'd see someone's face. Finally, I got the courage to check and... Excuse me. I got the courage to check. I got the courage to admit I'd lost my spot. And of course, nothing. Empty driveway, quiet street. And after that, it was scratches. I'd wake up with these thin red marks across my forearms or my ribs, places I don't normally scratch in my sleep. My sister got them too, and Dad brushed it off, saying that we were probably restless sleepers. But it was strange how it all stopped after we eventually moved out. The footsteps were the worst, though. We had this narrow staircase with old carpet, so it made a distinctive sound when somebody walked on it. But we'd hear just a few steps, like 1, maybe 2, sometimes 4, and then silence. No one coming down, no one going up, just partial footsteps as if somebody started and then stopped, and I could still hear it now if I think about it too much. One of the creepier things that happened to me personally is I had a pile of laundry on a chair in my room. One evening, while I was sat at my desk, I saw the pile shift. Not just slump over like clothes sliding. No, they moved and dragged slightly to the side like somebody was rifling through them. I immediately assumed it was the cat, but when I checked, the door was shut. No cat. I just sat there staring at the clothes for ages with my heart racing, waiting for it to happen again. It didn't. My dad had his own story. He swore that when he and my stepmom first moved in, before me and my sister were living there full time, the place felt dreadful, like in his words, walking into a bad memory. He said the main bedroom especially has this sour, weird smell that never went away no matter how much they cleaned. Eventually, one night, he said out loud, basically to the empty room, something along the lines of, "If you're here, you're not welcome. Leave us alone." He swore the smell disappeared after that. I don't know what was in that house, and could have been our imagination, sure. Could have been stress or drafts or cats scratching at night, but the knocks on the window, the footsteps that never finished, the laundry moving while I was watching it, those still stick with me. Funny thing is, none of us have had anything like it happen since we moved out. Has anyone else had the knocking thing, especially on upstairs windows? Because that one still makes my skin crawl. The 12th floor. This was about 2 summers ago. My sister surprised me with a trip to Chicago for her birthday, or for my birthday. She got us tickets to see Hamilton at the CIBC Theater, and I was over the moon about it. Never been to Chicago before, so I was excited to play tourist for a couple of days. The night before we left, I got curious and Googled the hotel we were staying at. The Congress Plaza, right off of Michigan Avenue. Anybody who's from Chicago probably already knows where this is going. That place is on every single most haunted hotel in Illinois list. Didn't even have to dig far. One of the first articles I saw mentioned a woman pushing her kids out of a 12th floor window in the 1930s, then jumping herself. Oh, okay. Anyway, I joked about it to my sister, and she rolled her eyes and said she'd hoped they didn't put us on the 12th floor, but guess where our floor was? Yep, the 12th. The front desk lady even said it was the only floor left with a double room available, so we didn't have much of a choice. My sister groaned, but honestly, I was kind of thrilled. I've always been into paranormal stuff, even if I've never really had a in-your-face experience. We checked in and dragged our suitcase up, and the room itself looked normal enough. A little bit dated, but most old hotels are, and my sister passed out for a nap right away. I just laid in my bed scrolling on my phone, and that's when I first noticed the tapping. It was soft, like somebody tapping a fingernail against the wall every couple of minutes. At first, I thought maybe it was pipes or something mechanical, but it kept happening, not rhythmic, not steady, just every so often, right as I was starting to ignore it. My sister woke up from her nap and heard it too, and we kind of laughed about it, but neither of us could figure out where it was coming from. We left for the show, had an amazing time, came back late. My sister crashed immediately, but I wasn't tired yet, so I laid in bed with the lights off, scrolling TikTok. Then I saw it. I turned my head, and standing over my sister's bed was this tall, dark figure. First, I thought maybe it was the curtain playing tricks on me. But no, the curtains were on the other side of the room, nowhere near her bed. And it was a man. I couldn't make out any features, just this solid, shadowy shape. He didn't move, he didn't lean down, just stood there watching. My stomach dropped, but I didn't say a word. I just turned my back to my phone, pretending not to notice. Every so often, I'd flick my eyes back toward my sister, and still there. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep. Next thing I knew was morning. The figure was gone, and over breakfast, I decided to tell my sister. I expected her to laugh at me, but instead she said something that made me go cold. She told me she'd woken up during the night because she felt her blankets being tugged, like somebody was trying to pull them off of her. At first, she thought it was me messing with her, but when she peeked, I was out cold in my side of the room. She's not a paranormal believer at all, but she admitted it creeped her out. We only stayed one more night, and nothing else major happened. Just more of that random tapping and scratching sounds. But I'll never forget the sight of that dark figure standing perfectly still by her bed. So yeah, if you're planning on staying at the Congress, maybe don't ask for the 12th floor. Anyone else stayed there and had something weird happen? Curious if it's just us or if that floor really isn't as active as people say it is. The Whisper on the Stairs. This happened back in 2021 when I was 17. I was at my buddy Tyler's apartment in Dayton, Ohio. That place has popped up a couple times too. He'd just moved into this place near Belmont, kind of run down but big enough that he could throw a couple get-togethers without the neighbors caring. That night there were maybe 6 or 7 of us hanging out, playing music too loud, just talking and eating garbage food. At one point, I realized I'd left my hoodie upstairs in the spare bedroom. And since it was freezing outside, I figured I should grab it before I forgot. Told everyone I was running up real quick, and I asked this girl, Ashley, who was kinda sorta talking to at the time, asked if she wanted to come with me. She laughed, but came anyway. Now, I swear the staircase in that place was way longer than it needed to be. Like you'd think you were at the top, but then it just kept going. When we finally got up there, it opened into this dark hallway with a couple of doors on either side. The bedroom with my hoodie was at the very end. We'd only taken maybe 3 or 4 steps down the hall when it happened. I heard my name. Not my nickname, not, "Hey dude." Not anything casual, like my full name whispered clear as day right into my left ear. And here's the kicker. Ashley was walking on my right. I stopped dead and Ashley grabbed my arm at the exact same time. didn't even have to ask if she heard it. I did anyway. Just gave me this wide-eyed look like, are you serious right now? Can't describe the feeling. It wasn't like hearing somebody yell from across the room. It was like whoever or whatever it was, their lips were practically touching my ear. My whole body went cold, like the chill started at the top of my spine and slid all the way down. I forced myself into the bedroom, yanked my hoodie off the chair, and we practically ran back down the stairs. When we got back, I asked Tyler if any of his roommates were home, or maybe one of his neighbors had come in. He shook his head and said no, and it was just us. We told everybody what happened, but of course nobody believed us. A couple of them laughed it off and said we were just trying to freak each other out. But that fear, God, that wasn't just startled or spooked. The kind of fear that feels like it's in your bones, the kind you can't laugh away. I haven't felt anything like it since, and honestly I hope I never do. But has anyone else here ever had their name whispered like that, right into your ear when no one's actually there? Because that's the kind of thing that sticks with you. The house that won't stay quiet. So, my folks have lived in the same house in Des Moines for about 20 years now. It's this old, creaky, two-story place with a big attic that nobody ever really uses, and a basement that I swear was designed just to scare children. The house itself was built maybe somewhere around 1910, and before my parents bought it, this older couple lived there forever. They passed, and their kids sold it, and now, well, we're here. I grew up in that house. Weird stuff has always kind of been part of the background noise. Nothing violent, nothing straight-up horror movie, but enough that it never really felt normal. When I was a kid, I'd hear footsteps upstairs when everyone was in the kitchen, or the old doorbell would ring and no one would be at the door. My mom was spooked at first, but my dad always waved it off, saying old houses just settle. I wanted to believe that too, but deep down I never bought it. The strange part is, things always pretty much happened when I was alone. If I stayed up late watching TV, I'd hear soft steps in the hallway. If my parents left me home during errands, I'd lose things, keys and headphones and whatever. They'd reappear hours later in the same spot I swore I'd looked 5 times. And even when I moved out for college, nothing ever seemed to happen to them while I was gone. But now I've been back for a while, and sure enough, it's picking up again. A few weeks ago, I'm washing my face in the middle of the bathroom. The door's right next to the sink, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw it swing open. Thought it was my dog nosing her way in, so I pushed the door wider. No dog. Walked into the hallway, and the place was dead quiet. Checked my room, and there she was, passed out in my bed, dead to the world. No fans on, no windows open, cats outside. Nothing should have moved that door. Another time, I walked into the living room. There was this mist, like actual haze in the middle of the room. My first thought was, holy crap, something's on fire. Tore through the house, checked the outlets, the stove, and every candle. Even mirrors in case sunlight was hitting them. Nothing, no smell of smoke, no heat, and the mist just kind of hung there for a few minutes. Then poof, gone. I had my dad, who's an electrician, check later for anything burnt out or malfunctioning. He didn't find a thing. But the dogs, man, the dogs are what really freaked me out. One night when my sister was visiting, she brought her husky mix. I was home alone with him while my dog was outside, and I was in my room scrolling on my phone when her dog bolts in and loses it, hackles up, teeth bared, growling at the corner of my room. First, I thought he was coming at me and actually slid off the bed in case he lunged. But then I realized he wasn't looking at me. He was locked on that corner, the one by the dresser. Tried to calm him down, but he barked and growled at it for a good minute straight before finally stopping. There was nothing there. I tore the room apart looking for a bug, a mouse, or anything, but nada. Then a similar thing happened with my dog. I was out on the terrace one evening, just writing and listening to music, and suddenly I froze, just right in front of me. Or she froze. Then she started barking her head off, snarling, ears up, the works, and I thought she was barking at me. I was about to be like, what the hell's your problem? Then I noticed her eyes weren't on me at all. She was focused right above me, toward the little cutout in the ceiling where the attic router sits. So I did the dumb thing. I grabbed a flashlight and went up there. Searched every dusty box, every corner. Nothing. Finally, I brought my dog up with me, thinking maybe she'd sniff out a raccoon or a bat. She trotted around calm until she hit back left corner. Then she froze and stared, ears up, tail stiff, wouldn't move. I shined the light all over, bare walls and insulation and nothing else. But she wouldn't stop looking at that spot. It's happened more than once now. Still can't explain it. I keep telling myself old houses just do weird things. Drafts and pipes and dogs picking up sounds outside that I can't hear. But when the mist appears in a room with no fire, when doors open without a breeze, when a dog that never barks suddenly acts like something invisible is standing in the room with you, how do you write that off? Sometimes I wonder if that old couple never really left, or if something else was already here before them, and we're just the latest family putting up with it. Would love to know, anybody else have pets that go ballistic at a corner or a doorway, like they're seeing something you can't, because honestly, that's the part that sticks with me the most. My eyes can play tricks, sure, but my dog, well, she doesn't lie. The deck that wouldn't burn. This happened when I was like 18, so like 6 years ago. Back then, I'm hanging out with 3 girls almost every day. Let's call them Maddie, 19, Clara, 18, and my best friend Emma, who's 20. The 4 of us were inseparable, always at each other's houses, and at that point in my life, we were just bored teenagers looking for anything exciting to do. Emma had just moved into this old house on the edge of town in Duluth. It's one of those creaky places with an attic full of junk left behind by whoever lived there before. And while she's poking around up there, she found this strange little book written in Polish. And her family's Polish, so she was able to translate parts of it. It wasn't like a normal tarot guide, it was more like instructions for some old divination ritual using playing cards. The rules were super specific. The cards had to be wrapped in cloth and only touched by the quote-unquote reader and the person asking the question. You could only do 1 reading per person per day, or else the answers would be wrong. And if you wanted to get rid of the deck, you had to burn it. Nothing else would work. The book also said something cryptic like, if you take, you must also give. None of us took that seriously at first. So, of course, Emma made her own deck, wrapped it in a scarf, and started doing readings. At first it was dumb teenage stuff like, does Jason still like me, or will I pass my math test? But the creepy part was that the answers always seemed to come true. She read for me once about whether I'd get a job I applied for at Target. The card said yes, and a week later I actually got it. And after a couple of times, though, I started to hate the way it made me feel. I'd leave her house with this knot in my stomach, like something was following me home. I stopped letting her read for me, and the feeling eventually went away. But the others kept going. A month or so later, Emma showed up at Clara's house completely freaked out. She wore this little silver cross necklace that she'd had since childhood, and she said it literally burned her skin. She showed us the red marks, one across her collarbone, and little welts on her fingers where she'd grabbed it. I touched the necklace myself, and it was just normal, cold metal, nothing. That night, she decided to burn her deck in Clara's backyard fire pit. We all stood around and watched it curl up and blacken. What should have been the end of it, right? Well, wrong, because by then, both Maddie and Clara had already made their own decks. Clara's incident happened not long after. She called me at like 2 a.m. sobbing, and she said she'd gotten up for water and saw something standing outside her kitchen window. Not a person exactly, but this tall tall shadow with glowing red eyes. She flipped on every light in the house, but it was gone, and the next day she was so shaken she burned her deck too. Then came Maddie. Maddie didn't believe in God at all. She was the type to say everything paranormal was just in your head. For a week she kept doing readings and laughing about how scared Clara and Emma had been. Then one night she called me whispering into the phone, begging me to come over. When I got there, she told me the wildest story I've ever heard from her mouth. She woke up around 3 and saw this little glowing thing hovering at the end of her bed. She described it like a cross between a fairy and some cartoonish unicorn, almost too cute, like something out of a kid's show. Buzzed around her room and she felt this insane urge to follow it. She said it led her to the door and then out toward the playground across from her apartment. When she stepped onto the playground, the fairy thing perched on top of the slide structure and just waited. We usually just call that a slide. She swore that she suddenly knew it was trying to get her to climb up so it could push her off, and that's when she snapped out of it, ran home, and tossed her deck straight into the trash. Except the next morning, the cards were back in her drawer, perfectly stacked, wrapped in the scarf like she'd never touched them. That's when she finally burned them. After that, none of us ever touched cards again. Not tarot, not playing cards, nothing. Looking back, I don't know what to make of it. Was it demons or her own guilt making us see things? Something tied to that weird old book Emma found. All I know is every single one of us had a different kind of encounter, and it always started with those cards. To this day, I won't let a deck of tarot cards in my house. Doesn't matter if it's just for fun. I don't want to take that chance. Anyone else ever heard of cards that come back after you try to get rid of them? Because that part still makes my stomach drop whenever I think about it. The car that wasn't there. This happened about 4 months ago, and I still can't make sense of it. I live down in Galveston, Texas with my boyfriend. If you've ever been here, you know how dangerous the roads can get late at night, especially along Seawall Boulevard. It's just one of those stretches where accidents happen way too often for how small the town is. And I grew up here, so I'm kind of used to hearing sirens and seeing wrecks, but this was different. Both of us work late shifts. He bartends on the Strand, and I waitress at a seafood spot near the pier. That night, I'd finished a little bit early, walked over to wait for him outside the bar. We were both sober, and he hadn't had a drink, and I never drink while working because I have to drive anyway. He offered to drive us home since I look like a zombie from running around all night. We decided to take the quote-unquote long way, meaning along the seawall, just because it's quieter that time of night and you can sometimes hear the waves if you roll the windows down. It's close to 2 a.m. and basically no traffic. Just us and the occasional set of headlights in the distance. After a while, we caught up behind this little white car. It looked like a Corolla or maybe an older Civic. We weren't tailgating, just following at a steady pace, maybe 30 or 40 feet behind. It was going a little slower than us, but not crawling, and we kept, talking about dumb stuff, like what to eat tomorrow, and some drama with his coworkers, the usual. Nothing spooky in our minds. Then up ahead, we saw the lights, red and blue flashing, filling the whole road. It looked like a cruiser parked sideways across both lanes, blocking the traffic. At first, I thought, okay, maybe it's road work, or maybe a DUI checkpoint or something. But then I saw the yellow tape. The car in front of us slowed down as it approached, and then this is what gets me. It looked like it just veered slightly and went around the cop car, like it had space to pass on the right shoulder. I remember thinking, oh, okay, we'll just follow them though. Except there wasn't any space. As soon as we get close enough, my boyfriend had to slam on the brakes hard. The cruiser was completely blocking both lanes, bumper to bumper. And beyond it, maybe 20 yards up, was a wrecked SUV flipped on its side. Cops and EMTs were milling around, and I swear I could hear the scrape of a shovel on asphalt as they picked up broken glass. The whole road was sealed off, end to end. Absolutely no way any car, not even a motorcycle, could have squeezed through. We both just sat there for a second in total shock, like, where the hell did that white car go? My boyfriend said out loud, "That doesn't make any sense," and just kept saying, "But we saw it. We both saw it." Because we did, and for minutes its taillights had shaped the way it slowed at the lights. There was no side street, no turnoff, no hidden driveway, just the ocean on one side and a row of empty shops on the other. The only option was behind the cop car, which was blocked, or in front of it where the accident was, and yet it was gone. We had to back up, do this awkward reverse turn, and go all the way around the block. The whole time, neither of us said much, but the hair on my arms was standing straight up. Later when we got home, we both sat in the car for a bit before going inside, and finally I asked him, "Do you think we saw a ghost car?" He just kind of shrugged, but he looked pale. He's not the type to believe in paranormal stuff, but he admitted there is no logical explanation for what we saw. Honestly, the scariest part wasn't even the car disappearing. It was the thought that if he hadn't slammed the brakes when he did, if we'd just assumed we could go around like that car apparently did, we might have plowed straight into the wreck. Still don't know what to make of it. Maybe it was a trick of the lights. Maybe we were both tired and our brains filled in the car that wasn't there. Doesn't explain why we both saw it, clear as day. Headlights, taillights, the whole shape of it for minutes before it disappeared. Has anybody else ever seen something like that? A phantom car? Maybe connected to a crash, because it's one thing to hear about ghost hitchhikers. But this was, well, I don't even know. Felt like we were watching a replay of something that already happened. Kind of feel you on that. The red eye in the hallway. This all started earlier this year, right after we lost our dog Max. He was only 7, and it came out of nowhere. Some kind of tumor that didn't get caught until it was too late. I grew up with him, so it hit me hard, and after we had put him down, I swear things in the house felt different, heavier somehow. At first, I chalked it up to grief, but then things started happening. The first time was just a few days after. It was around 1 in the morning, and I was sitting in the living room half asleep watching some dumb show on Netflix. Our living room opens to the dining room, and beyond that is the sliding door to the backyard. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something small dart from the edge of the couch to the dining room. A shadow low to the ground, just like Max when he used to sneak around looking for scraps. My heart jumped, and I actually got up saying his name out loud like an idiot, expecting him to come bounding back in. But when I stepped into the dining room, there was nothing, no noise, no movement, and it hit me. None of our other dogs were that small, and none of them were inside with me anyway. I wanted to believe it was just my brain filling in the blanks, but deep down I knew it was Max just saying hi. That should have been comforting, but it wasn't, because after that, things started getting darker. The second time it happened, it wasn't Max. It was a weekday morning, 9:30 or so. Just rolled out of bed, and my room's at the end of the hall, and across from me is the closet that we never really use except to cram coats into. I shut my door behind me and looked toward the stairs, and that's when I saw it, or, well, when I blinked I saw it. There was a head peeking out from the edge of the closet door, not tilted or crouched, just vertical, straight up and down like it was standing there staring at me. I had no face, no features at all, just pitch black like a shadow that wasn't attached to anything. And the height threw me off. Wasn't it tall enough to be an adult height, maybe 3-4 feet off the ground? I froze, I blinked again, and it was gone. The rest of the day, I felt like my nerves were on fire. Kept checking over my shoulder, certain something was there. You know that awful feeling you get when you know someone's staring at you even though no one is? Well, that was me all damn day. Then came the third time. I hate typing this out because it's been stuck in my head ever since. This was maybe a month ago, middle of the day. Just me being at home again. I'd already been up for a bit, made breakfast, showered, scrolled at my phone, pretty normal. As like most of these other people. I'd left the light on above the basement stairs because it's dark down there and I always worry about tripping over one of the dogs. So I'm coming back through the kitchen toward the basement and I stopped dead in my tracks. At the top of the basement stairs, way up by the threshold, maybe 8 feet off the ground, something's leaning out. The same head as before, only this time it wasn't short, it was impossibly tall, stretched upward, still perfectly vertical. And this time it had a feature. Right at the center of its face, a single giant human eye. No other facial details, no nose, no mouth, just one huge eye staring straight at me. The iris was red like blood, and it locked on me in a split second before I blinked. When I opened my eyes again, it was gone. But the image stuck. I keep seeing it when I close my eyes at night, and sometimes I dream about it. This thing standing around corners, waiting, its single red eye watching me without blinking. And lately I've been getting that same feeling all over again. The one where you're being watched. Not just once or twice, but almost every night, and if I'm sitting alone or walking to the bathroom, I'll stop and feel it. That heat on the back of your neck when something's there. I don't know what it wants, and I don't know if it's connected to Max or if losing him somehow opened a door to something else. All I know is it hasn't shown up again, yet. I'm terrified to know what happens if it does. Has anyone else seen something with a single red eye like that? Because I feel like next time, it won't just vanish when I blink. The tree in the empty lot. This happened a couple of years back when I was visiting my girlfriend's family in Mexico. I'd heard plenty of ghost stories before, but honestly, I'd always chalked them up to exaggerations. That trip is when I started thinking maybe people aren't exaggerating at all. Her family lives in a little town outside of Oaxaca, real quiet where everybody knows everybody. They've got this huge open lot at the edge of the town. Nothing in it except for one tree. Just one big old tree. Looks out of place with all the space around it. We were walking our dogs one evening just before it got fully dark and the sky was orange. A kind of twilight where shadows start to stretch weird. The dogs were fine until we got near the empty lot. Suddenly, both of them stopped in their tracks. One of them started whining and tugging to go the other way. The other stood there, fur bristled, growling low in its throat, staring at the tree. I laughed and said maybe there's a squirrel or something. My girlfriend didn't laugh. She grabbed my hand hard and said, "Don't look too long, just keep walking." And she was pale, like she'd seen something I hadn't. Later, back at her parents' place, I asked what that was all about. She told me flat out, if a dog won't go near it, we don't go near it. Then she told me about the time she'd seen things there. The first was when she was younger, like 16. She was walking home after hanging out with friends, and it was close to midnight. And as she passed that lot, she saw her neighbor's husband just standing under the tree. He was an older man, kind of frail, and looked weird that he was out there alone so late. She called out to him, "Senor Alvarez, are you okay?" And he turned to her and smiled and said, "Yes, my wife is coming with the car. We have somewhere to be." And she said something felt wrong immediately, like ice in her veins. "Why don't you wait with me?" he asked, mentioning for her to come closer, and she panicked and muttered a goodbye and hurried home. When she told her parents what she saw, her father immediately called their neighbor's house. The wife picked up, half asleep, and swore her husband was in the bed snoring beside her. He'd never left the house. But the second encounter was worse. It was after her uncle's funeral, a few years later, and her tradition everybody wears white to the burial. She'd stayed late at her cousin's place, and around 4 in the morning she started walking home, and she had to pass by the same lot. This time she saw 2 people sitting under the tree, both dressed in white. At first she thought maybe some relatives had stayed out after the funeral, but then one of them called her name and she froze, and it wasn't a voice she recognized. Both figures stood up and started walking toward her. One kept saying her name over and over, and she said the closer they got, the colder the air felt around her. She didn't wait to see who or what they were. She bolted and ran the whole way home, locked the door, prayed until the sun came up. When she finished telling me all this, she leaned closer and said, "I've never seen anything there during the day, only at night. That's why I pulled you away so fast, because the dog saw something when the sun was still up." I still don't know what to think. I grew up rolling my eyes at ghost stories, but I swear on my life I saw those dogs react like something was there in that field. And after hearing her stories, I can't stop picturing that tree just standing there alone like it's waiting. Now, whenever I see a lone tree in an empty lot or field, I feel that same shiver, like there's more to it than just a tree. Anyone else have stories about lone trees? Because I can't shake the feeling that some of them aren't just trees. The presence behind me. This happened when I was about 11 or 12, back when we lived in our old house in Spokane. Spokane again. It was the middle of summer, one of those days when all the neighborhood kids were outside playing basketball in the street. My sister was running through the sprinkler with her friends, and everyone was out except me. I was inside, glued to her old desktop computer in the corner of the living room. It was one of those big, chunky Dell monitors that hummed if you turned the brightness up too high. The desk sat against the wall, so my back was completely exposed to the rest of the room, and basically, if somebody walked in, I wouldn't know until I heard them. And that's the weird part. I didn't hear anybody. I just suddenly got this absolutely overwhelming sensation that somebody was behind me. Not right on top of me, but a few feet back, slightly off to my left. Like when you can feel eyes on you, even if you don't look up. My first thought was that my sister had snuck back inside to watch me play games. But it didn't feel like her, and I can't explain it better than that. It just felt heavier. I tried to ignore it, focusing on whatever game I had open. I think it was Zoo Tycoon, which makes this whole thing even weirder, but eventually I couldn't take it anymore. I spun around in my chair expecting to see somebody. Nobody. Just the couch, the TV, and the sliding door wide open to the backyard. I shook it off, turned back around, and maybe 5 minutes later the exact same sensation hit me, but stronger this time. Like someone was leaning forward and watching me closely. Made the back of my neck crawl and actually whispered, "What do you want?" out loud. Still nothing, so after another couple of minutes I couldn't stand it and I slammed the computer off, got up and bolted outside to hang with the others. I didn't say anything to my mom until a few nights later at dinner, just casually mentioned that I thought one of my siblings had snuck up on me while I was in the middle of the computer, but nobody had been there, and Mom froze mid-bite and just kind of stared at me for a second before saying, "Well, that's interesting." I asked her what she meant, and she hesitated and then told me something I'd never heard before. Like apparently at the time she'd been seeing a medium. She never really talked about it because my dad thought it was nonsense, but she'd gone a couple of times after her parents died and then her older brother, and he had been killed in a motorcycle in the 80s, or in a motorcycle accident. According to this medium, her brother had always been fascinated with electronics, computers especially. The woman claimed his spirit still liked to hang around whenever anybody in the family was using tech, like he was curious, trying to keep up. The moment she said that, my stomach dropped, and I remembered how close it had felt, how specific the sensation had been, and suddenly it wasn't just a creepy moment anymore, it was personal. I actually felt guilty because in the middle of it, when I was freaked out, I muttered, "Go away." And if it really was him, I basically told my mom's dead brother to leave me alone when he was just watching. Still don't know if I believe in mediums. Maybe my brain tricked me because I'm sitting with my back exposed in a quiet house, but I swear to this day I've never felt that specific sensation again. And what freaks me out more is that my mom had never told me anything about her brother liking technology. That detail came after. So whether I was going nuts or I really did have something standing there watching me play Zoo Tycoon. Has anybody else ever had something like that? That strong, somebody's right behind you feeling that turns out to maybe connect to somebody you've never even met.
Are you ready to unravel the enigmas that lie hidden in the shadows? Paranormal M is where the puzzle pieces of the supernatural come together. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell to stay connected with our captivating investigations. Did something follow us home? So me, my brother, and my friend decided to go to the cemetery and record, just for fun. We all believe in the paranormal and hope to catch something on camera. We didn't see anything, and all the camera picked up was a strange breath sound. We heard children's voices and rustling in the bushes, when there was no one there, though. Later that night, I woke up at around 2:45 a.m. and went into my hallway. I thought I saw my cat on the ground in front of me. When I walked over, it vanished. It was really dark, so all I could see was a dark shape. Then I noticed a shadow on the ground appear. It looked like shoulders and a head, as if someone was standing behind me. But when I turned around, nobody was there. I went back to my room and noticed the apparition I had mistaken for my cat floating down the hallway past my bedroom door. I went back to bed scared. I've seen only a few paranormal things in my lifetime, but nothing has happened at my current house until this. Did some kind of spirit follow us home from the cemetery? Are there any ways that I can find out if there are still entities of some sort in my home? Is this kid seeing a ghost? I, a 25-year-old male, work in a small town and work at a daycare center. Today, when a kid, who was 4 years old, was dropped off, their mother turned to me and asked me, "Who's Christopher?" And taken aback, I turned to her and asked her what she was talking about. It was only the normal kids that come here, and with it being a small town, I knew that she knew every kid there. She looked at me and said that her child said that there was someone new named Christopher, and I told her no. We both laughed it off and she left. Later on, I asked the kid who Christopher was, and they got really bashful and shyly said that he was a boy here, and that he was really shy and wasn't shy around them, and that he was only here when I wasn't. Now, I understand that kids can be kids, they could just be seeing imaginary friends. But the part that I get concerned by is that he's only here when I'm not. I'm not saying it's a ghost, but I'm also well aware of the fact that younger children can see things adults can't. And I'm not trying to be egotistical or anything like that, but I am a practicing pagan and I've spent a lot of energy protecting myself from bad spiritual stuff. Essentially, so I kind of find it concerning that something that only wants to communicate with a child doesn't want to be here when I'm not. So I ask, do you think this is a ghost, or just a child being a child and having imaginary friends? Worst night of my life. I'm 29 now, but this happened to me when I was 13. I was in an old family house that we still have, and I think I was just unlucky to be there and unlucky to wake up when I did. To start with, I need to let you know about this place. This is a house that was built literally room by room in the center of a small village far from anything else. I can tell you that it started being built in the mid-1800s. And back then, when you wanted to make your home bigger, you'd either build it or you just buy a room from the house next to yours and connect it to your house. Easy. This is what my grandfather did over and over and over again, until we were left with this massive house we know today. I've done the math with my grandma, and we think you'd be able to fit about 30 people in there to spend the night. The whole, I want my house to be bigger so I'll buy a room next door idea seems really funny now, but the problem with it is that you can't know what might have happened in the room that you're buying. And no one really thought about that at the time. So this is a big family home, and for as long as I can remember, every Christmas that we go there and have a great time with the entire family. The whole postcard family picture around the fire and everything. Eventually, since the house is so old, it started decaying. So my grandma decided that work needed to be done there. We started going more and more during the works. This is when my story comes to life. Back then, my other grandfather on the other side of my family wasn't doing too well after my grandmother's death. So we went around with him everywhere on holidays to get his mind off of things. This particular time, my parents decided to take him with us to spend some days at this house. While my living grandmother and my dad supervised the works being done there. Everything seemed completely normal when we got there. Because of the works being done, though, my usual bedroom wasn't available, so I ended up having to sleep with my grandfather in the smallest and creepiest bedroom the house had. I say had because since then it's been turned into a bathroom. But back then it was still a tiny bedroom with no windows. 2 old wooden doors instead of one that would come together, but not actually close. 2 old single beds with old creaking chicken wire for mattress base, and the mattresses that were probably the first invention after the old hay ones. Needless to say, I hated the bedroom. It used to be my grandmother's and great-aunt's bedroom, and then my father's cousins after that. And it still had all their creepy toys and plushies, and an old blue and white painting of my great-grandfather that I swear wouldn't take its eyes off me every time I came by it. That shit would freak me out. And that particular first night, I wasn't very happy with having to sleep in the bedroom. Not only was it super creepy, but it also opened into an old, cold hallway that would echo no matter what furniture was in it because every wall, ceiling, or floor was stone. To make things worse, my great-grandfather was a doctor, the only one around the area. So there was this glass cabinet in one of the corners full of old vials of medical liquids and syringes that he probably used in his days of work. In any case, I was creeped out by the fact that I had to sleep there, but I didn't want it to show. So I just accepted my fate and told myself it was fine. Nighttime came. Me and my grandfather went to bed, and after a bit, I could hear my grandmother and parents going out of the living room, turning off the lights, and going to their usual rooms. On the opposite side of the house. It took me longer than usual to fall asleep because of how much I sort of detested having to be there. But not hours long. And at some point, I could hear my grandfather's heavier breath on the bed next to mine, which meant that he was already out. Eventually, I put on a YouTube video on my phone, put it next to my head just under the pillow, covered myself up to the top of my head, leaving only my nose out so I didn't have to breathe the stale air inside the covers. And that's the last thing I remember before waking up to possibly the worst night of my life. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up to a nightmare so bad that it felt like it was coming through to my reality. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced the same, but this nightmare, I could see only a gray background, sort of blurred, like I needed glasses but didn't have them on. This blurry gray background was just there, sitting still, when I started hearing this little girl's laugh in the distance. Eventually, I started seeing the faded silhouette of a little girl in a dress. A dark shape showed up blurred in the middle of the gray, blurred background. I panicked, took a massive deep breath, and when I woke up from it, I could almost swear that I heard this laugh in the house. What I actually heard, though, wasn't a little girl laughing. My head was still covered. I was still in the same position. So I thought not long time had gone by. I took some breaths to try to calm myself down and made my phone screen turn on. It was around 2:20 a.m. A heavy boot step echoed in the hallway right in front of the bedroom doors. I stopped breathing, stopped thinking, stopped everything while my brain tried to process what the hell I just heard. Another footstep. I instantly covered my phone screen to smother the light. I froze underneath the covers, and at that point I considered myself lucky with how thick they were. Another step, and another followed, this time going a bit farther and farther until I could tell that they were at the end of the corridor. My body was frozen solid. I was so horrified that any breath I took would attract whoever this was, that any attempts to make my breathing more silent just resulted in hiccups of air coming in and out of me. At the time, I was trying to rationalize this and convince myself that this was only my dad walking around at night. But to do what? Another footstep and another one coming closer again. Please be him. Please be him. The footsteps were too heavy to be my grandmother or my mother, so it had to be him. Deep down, though, I knew my dad's footsteps didn't sound like that. Another footstep and another, and they kept coming right up to the doors and then back away. All the way until the end of the corridor, each step echoing and telling me exactly where whoever this was standing. Every time they went away, my body would relax and hope and pray for them to just go out the door. Every time they turned around and started coming closer again, my body would tense up until frozen solid, to the point that I would sweat and ache at the same time, and would yet be kept completely unable to relax or even move. The steps went away once more. In my thoughts, I was almost praying for them to go, and closer again. By now, my muscles felt like I had just finished a full-body workout that lasted for hours, and I was still completely unable to relax and let go of this complete and unrelenting panic. This time, though, the fear multiplied by 10. I could feel my eyes widening because of the suddenly and slowly I was hearing the bedroom door creak and whine open. I was almost crying, muffling my breath, when the footsteps slowly and heavily made their way between my bed and my grandfather's. How is he not awake from this? My panic was making me rage at my grandfather for not waking up and scaring this person away. I could feel their presence just standing there between us, deciding what to do next. And then slowly the footsteps turned around, walked outside the bedroom, into the hallway, and all the way to the end of it again. I was completely exhausted by now. It had to have been like 1 hour since I woke up because of this. I clicked my phone screen on. 2:25. I remember thinking that I had to be seeing it wrong, or maybe the time was wrong on my phone. Wishful thinking. The footsteps came back, going slowly up and down the hallway. By now, every single muscle of my body was hurting, exhausted, and at the end of what they could take. And I couldn't believe it was still 4 hours at least until the first sign of light outside could scare this person or thing away. Footsteps up and down the corridor, slowly torturing my heart, making it pound harder when it came closer, and a little less hard when it went away, like it was pulling my heartstrings and I had no say in it. Eventually, from the extreme exhaustion the panic was causing me, I drifted off to sleep. I have no idea if this was a self-preservation response from my body to allow me to rest a little bit, but when I woke up again, nothing had changed. Slow, heavy footsteps were going up and down the corridor, coming closer. Too close. It was too close to the bedroom doors, and then moving away again. One of the times they moved away, I clicked at my phone in panic, hoping it was almost daytime. 2:40. It was almost like I had fainted for a bit, and was just back awake as soon as my body could bear it again. The footsteps turned around at the end of the corridor, then back to me, closer, closer, and closer. Bedroom doors creak, and the footsteps are back inside the bedroom, and this heavy presence is back, standing between me and my grandfather. I couldn't even sob. I could take in air, which I would otherwise have done uncontrollably. I'm not kidding when I tell you that this went on for hours. To me, it felt more like it had been days without a ray of sunshine coming through the bedroom doors that kept being left ajar. I felt like my body just couldn't take it anymore, and yet this panic, it wouldn't loosen the grip on my muscles, until suddenly the footsteps just ceased. I peeked my ears up. Couldn't be sure if this was true. Was it done? My muscles loosened their grip on me, and the full exhaustion from everything that happened hit me even harder than before. I clicked my phone awake. 5:30, thank fucking God. I held myself still for a little bit longer, and when I was sure that there was no presence in the bedroom and no footsteps in the hallway, I turned in bed. The chicken wire under the mattress whined at this, while I lowered the covers just enough to be able to peek at the doors. They were still sitting still, both slightly ajar, and the distinct light of the start of the day was coming through. I felt complete relaxation and bliss. I could breathe again. One more footstep sounded through the house. It made me jump and instantly cover my head again. Then another footstep and another one. These were lighter and faster, like a happy energy roaming around the house. It was my grandma. I got up immediately, refusing to lay there another second, and just joined her in her morning routines, even going out with her to buy bread at 6:30 as I welcomed the thought of leaving the house like never before. I never told her what happened, though she did ask why I was up so early. Since she spent more time in the house than me and her bedroom was so far away from that hell of a hallway, I decided not to make her worried. I did check all the doors and windows before we left, to check if anyone would have been able to come into the house unnoticed, but I found nothing. All the doors and windows were locked from the inside, as they should be. In the days after that, I absolutely refused to sleep in the same bedroom and instead slept in my grandma's bedroom, which generally wouldn't have been much better, because right in front of the bed where I had to sleep there was this huge Narnia-like wardrobe with a massive mirror. And it always kind of scared the shit out of me, but at that time, this was infinitely better than going through what I had just gone through again. This bedroom isn't there anymore, and during the works it was eventually turned into a bathroom, which I'm actually glad was done. There's 10 other bathrooms in the house, so I never have to stick around that one for too long ever again. Did I witness something paranormal? For context, I live alone. Sometimes when I'm by myself, my electronics turn on. I hear things inside my apartment when I know I'm the only one there. And there's times when I get this really strong smell of cologne or just food being made that I know isn't coming from me. I always thought it was a little bit weird, especially with the smells, because I get that it feels as if they're so close to my nose, but it never really did scare me. Or I guess it just didn't give really much thought about it. I still don't know if I should. I bring it up because last night I had a really weird experience, and after doing some research, I wonder if they are somehow connected. My street has been under construction for a bit now, and yesterday they had completely demolished the sidewalk outside of my house. So there was a hole and just a pile of concrete around it. Last night at around 11:40, I decided to go down to have a cigarette and also take my garbage out. I've done this countless times. I've never had an issue, so I didn't give it much thought. When I opened the front door, I heard what sounded like an animal scurrying away from the trash cans and into the bushes. There's usually a possum and a skunk that just hang out around here at night, so it didn't feel strange. But I still took out my phone and used the flashlight to see if there was an animal nearby. I pointed the flashlight at the bushes, the street, near the trash cans, literally everywhere, but I didn't see anything or anyone. So I just brushed it off and proceeded to take the trash out. I was about to sit on the stairs of the porch to have a smoke when this man appeared out of fucking nowhere. He was just standing in front of the construction facing my way and not moving. He was a bigger man, tall and broad, so it was scary that I hadn't even heard him. I looked at him, and for a moment we just stood there looking at each other. I didn't recognize him, so I knew that he didn't live in my house. The house is separated into 5 apartments, and I'm familiar with the people that live inside. So it made me so uncomfortable when he started to slowly walk my way. While he was walking, he didn't say a word or even make a sound. His expression was flat, and as a young woman, I didn't want to stick around to find out what he wanted, so I just booked it back to my apartment. This interaction spooked me so bad that I slept with a knife by my bed. I've talked to a couple of people about it, and they all thought it was creepy, but it was my friend that suggested that it could have been an apparition, but I don't know. What do you think? A really creepy man, or is it something else? I really don't know how to feel about it or even sort of make of it. I just know it was really strange. I I just want to know what the hell was that. So I do believe in the supernatural, but I've never really had an experience before, until that night. It happened last year, but I still think about it. One night I was sleeping, then I woke up by the sound of a really loud, heavy breathing. I stand up and started searching where it was coming from. Looked to my younger brother who was sleeping in his bed. Looked to my sleeping cockatiel in the cage, only to realize that the noise was actually coming from my window. I couldn't visualize what was behind it because my window is not see-through, only if I open it. The moment I stepped close to the window, the breathing sound stopped, and I heard the sound of something heavy going down in the sink. There's a sink on the other side of the window from the laundry area of the house. Like the creature who was there, leaved. I was really scared but managed to come back to sleep. I was for sure not hallucinating, 100% awake. And that was not an animal, neither a human, since the laundry area is protected by grids and locks. The only animal that can enter there are cats, but they're not capable of doing such a loud sound. One thing that I want to point out is that I'm not a religious person, but I always keep a chaplet hanging in the head of my bed, just for protection. And that night, it wasn't there. Nurse experience of a ghostly visit to a patient. I've been a nurse for many years, and so I have a few stories of strange ghostly occurrences, but I thought I would share my favorite one with you. I worked on a cardiac unit, and one part of the ward was for the acutely unwell patients, and the other part was for the more stable patients who were waiting for an angiogram. I had a nice lady patient in her late 60s, a fit and active lady who's had a few episodes of mild chest pain, and so was booked in for a routine angiogram. The waiting list got delayed due to emergencies, and she had to stay in for longer than usual, about 3 days, despite her being perfectly well. Each morning on my drug round, she would tell me that her husband, who had been dead for about 10 years, was standing at the foot of her bed overnight. She was disturbed about this and said she didn't want to die yet, so why was he there? An angiogram is a very safe and routine procedure, so each morning I reassured her that millions of people have this procedure every day with no problems at all. On the last morning, she was in tears saying, "My husband was there again, why was he there?" Anyway, I'm sure you can guess. She came back onto the unit fine, then went into cardiac arrest very dramatically. You couldn't bring her back. She unfortunately had a very rare complication from the angiogram. I find comfort in that it seems like there's good evidence in an afterlife, but I also felt terrible that I had to reassure her that it was safe, and when she wasn't ready to die. Was her husband waiting for her, trying to warn her? I really need other people's opinions on this. I think there's a ghost or demon in my house. Here's a little backstory on what happened in this house before I get into the scary part. We're the first owners of this new house. In a previous farm town in Idaho, ever since we've been here, we've had weird paranormal things happen. Every night at 3 a.m., and I stay up late, I hear someone walk up and down the hallway, and the noise stops at my door. I think, oh, it's just a ghost messing with me, no big deal. A week ago at 3 a.m., I hear someone walking and ruffling through the items I have upstairs, like angrily searching for something. And all my things are in different places when I go out there. Then a few nights ago, I was on FaceTime, and right at 3 a.m., my iPad flies off the table and hits the ground. Of course, I get scared, but I just knew it was the ghost and continue on with my night. Now here's the really scary part that I cannot wrap my head around. I was napping for an hour, and at 10 p.m., I started dreaming, but it wasn't a regular dream. I I was outside my body and looking at myself laying on the bed. When I dream, I never know I'm dreaming, but I was fully aware of everything. I still had my memories and thoughts. I could hear my parents downstairs watching TV and my sugar gliders making noise in the other room. I then looked to the other side of my bed and see a huge dark shadow watching my body sleep. So I freaked out and tried to climb back into my body and try to wake up. But every time I tried, the shadow would rip me out and throw me away from it. So after trying a few more times, I walked downstairs to my parents and tried to get their attention. But every time I would try and touch them, my hand would go through them like a ghost. So I panicked even more. I ran upstairs back to my body and tried again and again and again, and I was thrown out. So I grabbed my cross necklace that I was wearing and prayed to God to please help me get out of here, and I shoot awake. Now here's the weird part that I can't explain, and it makes me think that it wasn't a dream. While I was sleeping, my parents took their nightly showers and changed into new clothes. And when I was dreaming, I saw the new clothes that they were wearing, and when I woke up and saw them, they were wearing the exact same thing. How would I know what they changed into if I didn't see it before I slept? Then, when I told my parents my dream, they said the dog started going crazy and growling randomly when he was dead asleep. Around the same time that I was down there in my dream trying to get their attention, like he saw me. My mind immediately went to the movie Insidious where the kid couldn't get back into his body, and now I'm too scared to sleep in my own house. Ask Reddit. I was raised in a religious household, so I already believed in stuff like demons and hauntings. But there was definitely one experience that weirds me out to this day. I must have been like 12? Don't remember my exact age. Anyway, it was very early in the morning, the sun wasn't even rising, and my dad, my grandpa, and I were getting ready to go out somewhere. It's essential to point out that in the hallway, there was this gate that blocked access to the living room and dining room and kitchen, and it was closed. I go to the bathroom and I'm brushing my teeth with the door wide open. My dad's changing in his room, and my grandpa's changing in his room, and my sister and grandma are sleeping. I stare in the mirror for a bit and look to the side when I see a cup floating. No one was holding it, and everyone was in their rooms. Suddenly, the cup flies towards me as if someone threw it. It landed in the shower next to me. Another experience that was unsettling happened another day. Me and my sister were watching TV, my dad was doing something that I can't really remember, and my grandma and grandpa were reading their Bible study lessons in the dining room table. A bright flash of light went off in the middle of the room, but there was nothing that could have caused it. There were no cameras. It was pretty late and no one was outside. We kneeled. Ask Reddit 2. First off, religion. I believe people have souls, and I believe in an afterlife. Second, I've seen 3. My parents like to paint bedrooms, so when I was 10, I was sleeping in the basement living room, and I wake up after a dream and walking down the stairs is someone who isn't glowing, but is unnaturally white in clothes color, and in features like a reverse silhouette. When I blink, they're gone. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. I think this experience was most likely a dream, but it made me believe my house was haunted for a full month. Second was while working at a spook house of all places. I was a spook actor, and while I was working in my spot waiting for customers like usual, when I see a shadowy figure peeking through my curtain. I don't know if there's another actor, or if it's a customer, or if I can even trust my eyes about what I'm seeing. So, I sneak around the other side of the curtain and they're gone. I tell the actress I'm working with, and she explained that her haunt is actually haunted. The ghost is nicknamed Jeeves, and he or she has been around there for a while. They don't tell new actors or customers as a rule. Jeeves is harmless and isn't usually seen while the haunt is running. It's not spooky or anything, and we've even learned some of their behavior. They're more active during the beginning of the season, just curiously peeking on actors. Then, they are far more elusive. I've seen them whenever I entered the haunt early, and then they run away, go through the walls, disappearing or ducking behind props. As far as we can tell, Jeeves is shy and doesn't want to be discovered. Some actors told me that Jeeves has given them nightmares or visited them in nightmares when they've told about him to customers. I didn't believe them until I did it, and then I had a nightmare about the haunt and understood that it was a warning. So I stopped doing that, and I tell people about how Jeeves doesn't want to be bothered or discovered. It's still not spooky to me, and I hope people are praying for them. As far as I know, they died in a fire, and the haunt was built years afterwards. The other time was in the house I live in now. I woke up at 4 a.m, and without even thinking about it, looked over and locked eyes with the boy. We stared at each other for a few seconds, both with a look of, "What are you looking at?" before he faded away and I realized what happened. He appeared to be in his teens, brown hair, thick glasses, and a plaid shirt with jeans, like school clothes from the 70s. He seemed to be illuminated by a strong moonlight, even though he was inside. I doubt this last one is a dream, and I had to push back my paranoia to get to sleep even though nothing about him seemed malevolent. In fact, he seemed kind. I was just stunned to see a ghost fade away. Of the 3 ghosts I've seen, I have the most evidence of Jeeves because of multiple witnesses. And the least, probably the first one when I was 10. The boy in the clothes feels the most real to me. I think it's interesting that they all have different levels of light on them. The first one seemed to be a bright light despite being in the dark, and Jeeves was always shadowy, and the boy seemed to be in the moonlight. My deceased friend visits me. I'm a firm believer that there is much more that we don't understand, something beyond our senses. I was always sensitive to the paranormal, and I believe in ghosts, or what I'd like to call visitors. My best friend Jack passed away at 26. He was truly a loving and creative soul. There's nobody like him. He was originally my brother's best friend in high school, but we were closer the year before he passed on, up until the very last day. He drove drunk, flipped his car, and ran from the cops on the coldest day of the year. This was a death sentence. Irresponsible, but he was trying to get away from his brother, I believe. I was supposed to sort of see him that night. About a week after his funeral, I had my first dream of him. Most of the time he was watching my dream from the side. Right before I woke up, I was holding his face and asked, "Why?" He said, "Well, I didn't mean to," in his goofy and dumb voice, and shrugged me off like he usually would. I felt him that night, and I'm 1000% sure of it. At this time, my brother, his friends, and I were playing this new game called Valheim. It's a game that he would have loved, and we played it in his honor and tried to grieve him. 3 days after the original dream, I had a dream that I was texting him. Usually you can't see text in dreams, which was extremely odd. He called me, I answered. I told him about this game and how he would have loved it. He was so interested. I got all sad and asked him what death was like. He said, well, it was definitely cold, in a sarcastic voice. My final dream of him was definitely a sketchy one. I was sitting in my car in the driveway where I'm usually the most zen. I looked over and saw Jason. He smiled and didn't say a word. I was rambling on about how I missed him, thought he was gone, I started to wake up and got flashes of my life. I saw my last moments. I crashed on a dangerous bend on a main road near me. He was warning me. I woke up thinking I was dead. I scrolled through Facebook to calm myself down and saw an eerie post. Deceased visitors will visit you in your dreams, choosing places where you're most peaceful. What the fuck? Jack saved my life when he isn't even alive. My brother finally went to his grave after a year of his passing, and he said out loud, "I wish I could hear your dumb jokes one more time." He got a call from a telemarketer. His name was Jack. Invisible forest creature. I have a very strange walking trail encounter with an invisible two-legged, very large thing while walking with my dog. Some of the trail sections have wooded areas along the side of the walking path. So most of the trail has woods on one side of the path and the park is on the other side of the trail. The wooded area isn't very large. I would guess about 300 feet by half a mile. So I don't consider it a forest, I just call it the woods. The wooded area of the park has 3 or 4 creeks, and I think only one of the creeks has some water. Most of the trees are beautiful, and normal tall trees and some of the trees here and there look like they're dead. There's always people and kids going down there to ride bikes, hang out, and whatever else they do. One day around 4 p.m. I took my female dog, Bertha, to our normal everyday walking path. We had just gotten off the car and began our walk. We were probably walking on the trail for about 5 minutes or so when I started feeling weird after a turn. Not scared or afraid. I started to feel happy and my little pain and aches had disappeared. This was very strange because I remember saying to myself inside my head, not out loud, I said, "Wow, I feel good. I feel like I'm a little kid. I feel brand new." It was only about 20 seconds of this young and playful, joyful feeling when all of a sudden, something had let go of a large bush that it was holding on to. The sound sounded like it was intertwined in the bush, like holding on and trying to hide. At the same time of the noise in the bush, Bertha turned toward the bush and started going after it. I had Bertha on a leash, and she was dragging me, almost taking me into the woods. I had to hold her back because I couldn't see what was making all that noise. I moved through another tall bush and started stepping heavy with loud thumps. I think it fell when it made it out of the bush area. The thing was only about 15 feet away from us, on the other side of the bushes, and it sounded like 2 very large horses stomping on the ground. I could see the bushes and the grass moving, but I couldn't see anything. We moved back away from the trail a few feet so I could see a clearing on the other side of the bushes to try to see this thing. I looked right where the sounds of steps were coming from and saw nothing. So I looked down on the ground and I could see where 2 feet were stepping on tall grass. I remember I said to myself in my head, "No way. That is not an invisible monster." After I said that, I heard something I will never forget. The thing started making a loud T-Rex stomp, and then I said out loud, "That sounds like a T-Rex from the movies." I recall I could feel the stomps on the ground too. Bertha and I were just looking into the woods at this sound. I can feel my eardrums shaking bad, and in both eardrums, they felt like busted speakers. In my head, I said, "It's trying to blow my eardrums." The T-Rex stomps lasted for 10 to 15 seconds. Then the sound stopped, and it just turned off like a light switch. I have no idea if it jumped in or if something just vanished. It's strange because after all that, I still felt happy, with no worry or fear at all, just very curious. I really wanted to see it. On the way home, I remember thinking, any other day, I would have been afraid and ran away from it. But I heard this thing 3 or 4 times in the following days, in another section of the woods. I could hear something heavy walking on leaves, just inside the tree line about 30 feet away in the woods alongside me and Bertha. I would hear it, and I would stop without turning to it. And it would take a step or two, and then it would stop. I turned around a few times to see, but there was nothing because it wasn't moving. I did this a few times to make sure, and I would tell myself in my head, if a person stays on trail, they have no permission to take you. I think one time, and I heard his steps in the woods next to me. I said to myself in my head, I think it wants me to make a mistake and go into the woods towards it. After I said that, I never heard it again. I'm sure that it can hear what I'm thinking. Just a few weeks ago, I had seen something very strange related to this thing. Bertha and I were walking in the same part of the trail, only about 100 feet away from the first encounter where the bushes were. I stopped to look into the woods at this view into the woods. I was standing still looking past the trees. How the area was covered, maybe in a few inches of light green grass. I was looking kind of downhill, how the woods would go in and around the creek down there. I said to myself, it looks beautiful, the trees, the color of the greens, and the sunlight and the shadow. It looks just like a postcard, perfect. About 2 or 3 seconds after I thought that, while I was just looking down at this area of woods, I saw a big human-shaped blur move between 2 trees about 80 feet away from me. I saw it for a split second, and it was big, maybe 10 feet tall, big head, big wide muscled shoulders, and I remember his big left leg. I remember his left knee and big muscle above it, the laterals. I would see the thick shiny hair on the leg. Yeah, this thing looked exactly like the predator from the movie when he's cloaked. It was very weird how my brain was able to capture this image. My memory surprised me. His shoulders, his head, and the side of his back were reflecting the woods between him and me. It looked like a male, not a female. I was surprised just like him. In my opinion, I think he took off running because he thought I was sensing that he was in the area, but I had no idea that he was there. I think he knows Bertha. Can't pick on him if he hides a little farther away from the trail. I'm very cautious when we go walking near the woods now. I also tell people where I'm going, and I carry a few extra things hidden on me. I have no idea why this thing got so close to me or what its intentions were. And I also don't know why it ran away from me those times. Was there something or someone behind me that startled it? These occurrences were a very incredible time in my life. Changed me in a good way. I often think, and I don't know, but maybe that's why dogs are on the planet. To help us pick up on these invisible things when they get too close. Always be happy and do the things you love doing in your life. Have no worries, and certainly no fear. Hope my story helps people to be alert and careful out there in this world. The Voice in the Fire Station. I work 24-hour shifts at a semi-busy fire department that's been around since the 1870s. We run an ambulance unit. I sleep in my own room, separated from the male firefighters. A few nights ago, a voice woke me up, clear as day beside me in the room. It was a deep, old-sounding voice. He said, "Come on, get up. It's time to get ready." It startled me out of my sleep. It was about 3 a.m. I jolted up, looked around the empty room for the voice. There was nobody there, but I decided to get out of bed and get my shoes on. The second I got my shoes on, the tones went off, calling us for a code blue. Code blue is a person in cardiac or respiratory arrest. The man had a heart attack and died. He was the first person to survive CPR and being shocked by the AED in our entire county for almost 10 years. He went home a day ago, and he was 70 years old. Face in the ambulance rear view window. I, a 24-year-old female, work for a semi-busy fire department. We just ran a late-night lift assist and returned to station at about 1 a.m. During my report, I realized our vitals haven't uploaded from our Zoll device. It's a blood pressure cuff and a SOP2 monitor. So I walked out to the ambulance, hopped into the back, and started troubleshooting why the vitals weren't sent. I decided to just print them off. As I was getting ready to go back into the station, I, for no reason at all, glanced to the front seat area. There's a small window that glimpses into the front of the ambulance truck, and a rearview mirror for the driver to see what's going on in the back. There was a face in the rearview mirror, a bald man, with this horrible scowl on his face. I instantly felt a shot of terror go down me. I tried to talk myself out of it. I was trying to figure out what I was seeing, but the longer I stared, the more I realized it was clearly a man's face. All I could see was his forehead, no visible hair on the sides, and it seemed like he was bald. And then his eyes. He had light wrinkles, but such a hateful look. He was glaring right at me, his eyes staring straight into mine. Needless to say, I got out of the ambulance and pretty much ran quick back to the station. I didn't recognize the face. We have one bald worker, but he isn't on duty today. The face did actually look a bit like him, and that firefighter is a negative person who doesn't like females in the fire service. But I couldn't be 100% on the face being my coworker. Ghost encounter I had as a child. When I was young, probably around 8, I had a conversation with my grandmother. My family follows the Catholic religion, and I was talking to her about how I sometimes hear my name being called at night when it's dead quiet. She said she's experienced this too, and that they were lost souls trying to find their way to heaven, and I should pray for them so they can leave purgatory. At night, I don't remember when, but it was recently after we had the conversation, I heard a voice calling out my name, and I said a prayer. I prayed on our Father and asked God to send the soul to heaven. When I finished and laid back down, I heard a clear, crisp whisper right into my ear, and he said, "Thank you." I then heard some kind of giggling or noise of excitement as the noise traveled out my window. The voice sounded like a child, the gender of the voice being ambiguous. I know it wasn't a dream since I remember going into my mother's room after and asking to sleep with her. Ask Reddit. My mother-in-law's house is definitely haunted, and the spirit definitely doesn't like me. When my husband and I were first dating, he had gotten a little bit drunk and crashed on his bed in awkward positions. Me half hanging off the side, and him normally on the bed. Apparently it rained that night, and in the middle of the night, a stream of water leaked through his ceiling fan and dribbled down on me, waking me up. When I opened my eyes, there was this dark figure standing over me. It looked like he was wearing a hoodie and his hands were in the pockets, and it just loomed over me. I freaked out and woke up my husband asking him if there was something else in the room. My husband wakes up, yells, "Fucking people!" and storms off to get me a towel, completely missing the dark figure watching me, who, by the way, hadn't moved when my husband got up. So he comes back with the towel and goes back to sleep, leaving me like the scared little kid underneath the covers. The figure eventually left, and somehow I managed to go back to sleep. It's been 10 years, so figured there's been tons of storms, and that fan never leaked again. A few years later, we offered a house sit for the in-laws while they went to Florida for spring training. My husband goes off to work, and I'm chilling in the back room watching TV when the front door slams shut. The front door is broken and needs to be slammed to shut properly, so when it does, it startles me and I hear thump, 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 thump up the stairs and into the room above me. I figure it's one of my husband's step-siblings, so of course I head upstairs to investigate. No one's there, and it's eerily quiet too. I waited on the porch for my mom to come up and get me. Fast forward a few more years and we have a baby. And when he's about 2-ish, we again agree to house sit for 2 weeks while the in-laws go to Europe. The first night there, the smoke alarm in the kitchen goes off at 4 a.m., promptly scaring the ever-living shit out of us. We play it up to the low batteries. Over the weeks, things get relatively quiet. Every once in a while, it'd sound like someone was stumbling around the house, bumping into things, and I try to pretend I never heard it until the last few days. My son had speech therapy at the time, and I couldn't wait to get out of the house. The night before, I lost his sippy cup and looked everywhere for it, but never came across it. My husband would leave for school at like 4:30 to 5 a.m., and when I woke up, I went to the fridge to get breakfast ready for my son, when lo and behold, there's his sippy cup in the fridge. I called my husband to find out where he had found it, and he said he didn't. The fridge was pretty empty, and I had been in it about a half a dozen times, and then there it is in the fridge, right in the front. I blow it off as maybe just me not noticing it, and I take my son to therapy. When we get back, he kicks his shoes off in the middle of the room and runs off to play. I start getting things together to pack and leave, and eventually it's time to go, but I can't find my son's shoes. They were taken off right in the middle of the room. I again look everywhere for them, under the furniture in the bedrooms, which always felt like someone was right behind me watching me, by the way. I looked everywhere. After about an hour, I'm about to give up when I trip over them in the middle of the room, where he kicked them off. I said, "Fuck this," and I left. Since then, I've been reluctant to house sit for my in-laws, and I refuse to be alone. I used to clean for them, and I'd never do the upstairs, especially in the master bedroom, because of the feeling of someone right behind me. It was always tenfold. There's something in that house, and it always makes me sure that I know it's there with me. Something strange going on inside the ruins of Pontefract Castle, or more likely, with my mental health. In 1998, I was an 8-year-old boy on a school trip to the ruins of Pontefract Castle. I'd always lived locally. In fact, I can trace my ancestry back many hundreds of years in the Pontefract area. But as you can imagine, in a popular destination for school trips due to the low cost and rich history of what's left of the castle and its surrounding area. Indeed, I had my christening at the old church that survived the destruction of the castle, presumably spared due to religious difference. Sorry for the background, I have a tendency to say more than I need to, but on to the story and the strange position I currently find myself in the present day. So we arrived, and we were at the castle. One evening after school, eagerly anticipating sort of a grand tour of the grounds, or more particularly, in fact, our promised descent into the dungeons. The evening seemed to drag on as our guide droned on and on about this one piece of masonry or that, what used to be here or there and why, all that. Finally, we came to what we'd all been waiting for, the descent. I should say that it was only a small group of us who ended up going down, perhaps about a third of our overall number, as many, quite understandably, didn't feel up to going down those steps into the utter darkness. I mean, we were 7 or 8 years old, and I was scared myself, but excitedly so. So down we go, our teacher leading the way with torch in hand, and surely enough, it was a dungeon all right. As dank and dismal as it gets, giant cobwebs in every corner, and just a damp and unnerving place to be, very creepy. Further down we ventured until we reached some kind of plaque detailing what the place was, how it was used, etc. All very interesting stuff, the teacher reading it out loud as the hairs on the back of our necks stood up. So we had a potter around, jumping at shadows, some of the boys playing tricks trying to spook each other, as you do. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Our teacher announced from down one of the pathways, 5 more minutes, lads. Then we're off back up. So me and one of our classmates were just looking at some medieval graffiti left by the original and unfortunate occupants of the dungeon. Barely legible stuff, to be honest. Can't remember what it said. It was shortly after this that things took a decided turn for the worse. Me and my classmate had gone down one of the pathways alone, and he dared me to go deep into what can only be described as a pitch-black abyss. Me, wanting to be the big man, went ahead to prove I had the stones. And then, well, I wish I had something dramatic to tell you. An encounter of the paranormal or some such, but no. Should add that I don't believe in ghosts. There's no proof available that I would even consider concrete, and I think that's a fair position to hold. But what happened was nothing. Walking into the darkness is the last thing I remember. I'd collapsed in the tunnel, later being brought around back to consciousness above ground by concerned teachers. An ambulance was called, and I was given a once-over and later the all-clear. My grandfather came to collect me and just drove me home. It was the night it started, the craziest vivid dreams, flashbacks almost, going underground, the cobwebs, the creepiness. I was reliving the descent in my dreams. And this is where things get creepy. In my dreams, I saw a figure, a hooded figure, in a monkish habit, just glimpses of it. There one minute, then not, walking across the grounds, turning around here and there, then suddenly giant fucking monks stood right in front of me, jolting me awake at night. This carried on about a week and a half. Nightmares in the truest sense, recurring, always the same, Pontefract Castle, darkness, and an apparition. Can you use that word in the context of a dream? An apparition of this very unnerving hooded figure. Honestly, catching sight of it would have had me shitting myself. It didn't feel like it was a good-natured thing. It felt bad, wrong, dark. I told my family, and while they felt bad for me, it was just a nightmare, which is fair enough, I suppose. Children do have nightmares, right? And once again, I wish I had something more dramatic to tell you, but the dreams, they just stopped. After recurring for over a week and leaving me petrified, they just stopped. Mercifully so, I must be said. And that was it. It's always creeped me out to think back on it, and I'm sure that everybody's got a story about bad dreams as a kid. So you're probably thinking, wow, this has been a bit of a dull story, but here's the thing, and the reason that I'm writing this message to you guys now. I'm 32 years old, a father of 2, married, a grown man, and the dreams are back. Past 8 nights, exactly as I remembered them, recurring. It's crazy. But the monk is back in my mind somehow, over 20 years later. I'm seeing Pontefract Castle in my dreams. Creep the fuck out. Why now? What's changed? Am I really struggling at the moment? I'm scared to go back to sleep now, a grown man, because I know what's awaiting me when I do. I can't help but feel like I have some unresolved issue in my relation to those ruins. Can't carry on like this. I have a job to hold down and a young family to look after. I feel like I need to go back. I feel it in my bones that I need to go back. Something about that place that's affected me in some way that sat dormant within my mind for a long time. Perhaps if I face the subject of my dreams, go looking for answers, then maybe I can find some kind of resolution. Again, I don't believe in ghosts or the paranormal. These are surely just dreams, but why? Have any of you heard of anything similar to the situation before? I'm just looking for advice. I feel like a bloody lunatic at this point. I don't understand the relevance of the monk figure. I could deal with dreaming about the castle. It's just some ruins. But it's the bloody monk that's giving me the shits. I find myself jumping at shadows all the time. I've always been so rational and level-headed, but now I'm seriously considering almost laughably possibly just being totally haunted. I live in a very, very, very haunted house. So 7 years ago, I left my hometown and I moved to a province where a religious war took place many years ago. The house I moved to is huge, just the size for my big family to live in. My mom, one of my brothers, and I consider ourselves witches, by the way. At first, we found some weird, sketchy things. There's a kind of dungeon underneath the stairs, a small room that locks from the outside, an escape hall, one window, and a very big butchery-looking hook in a room in the backyard. We didn't think much about it until the apparitions began. It all started after my cat died. The superstitious neighbors poisoned him because he was black. I started feeling like I was being observed in my own room. I even installed blinds to try to get some more privacy, but it didn't stop, and in fact, worsened. Whenever the lights were out, silhouettes appeared in the corners, and I kept hearing a noise like nails tapping on my wood furniture. Then the doors started opening and closing without any apparent reason. Things were worse at the bathroom. Whenever I showered, I could see as though the shower door was a silhouette of a man, walking from one side to another. Whenever I was on the other side of the shower, things were thrown at me: shampoo bottles, soap bars, towels. At 4 to 5 p.m., the silhouette of a woman walked around the living room. Also, my mom started acting weird about her looks. We later found out her bathroom mirror was extra cursed. In my brother's room, originally the service quarters, a woman dressed as a maid appeared. My brother could see her from the mirror, and she'd wake him up super early in the day. We cleansed the house, and some of those ghosts disappeared, but not all of them. Then my brother got into his summoning era and re-haunted the house. I've always been a ghost magnet, by the way. So now there's a man at the stairs. Not only do we feel cold there, but also like there's a leak right above and the water falls around his spot, as if someone was there. We've also seen him from different angles. There's also a ghost running downstairs. We haven't seen it, but we have heard it. My brother also saw a ghost of a black man just standing at the window. We live right by a train that usually carries illegal immigrants from Latin America. Oftentimes, we've heard voices around the house as well. Then my dad brought home a vintage leather couch. Our dogs would bark at it and my cats would hiss. He placed it right in front of the TV. That's when we started seeing the silhouette of the man sitting in the couch. And sometimes it's visible as if there's actually someone there. I've even confused him with my grandfather. My boyfriend has seen at least 2 ghosts by the hallway. The house generally feels heavy, and it's really tiring to be here. There's water, gas, and electricity leaks, 2 kinds of plaques in the kitchen, and the walls leak and the closets are rotting. No matter what we do, we can't control it. It's falling apart. Finally moving out, but we have considered having a seance before leaving just to say goodbye to the ghosts because I've grown fond of them. Do you think it's a good idea? I have used a Ouija board before, not in this house, and I wonder if I should use it here. Also, tips are very welcome. Can anybody tell me what this is? It's a true story. I've lived in my apartment with my fiancé and 2 sons, 11 and 19, for around 6 years. This particular apartment is at an intersection that is usually pretty busy. As such, many accidents have happened here. My 19-year-old and myself have witnessed at least 3, most likely fatal accidents. We're unable to find out if anybody lived. And many more accidents in general over the years. Things were pretty quiet the first couple of years, but then things started happening and have been relatively consistent since they started. The first instance for me was while both my sons were at school and my significant other was at work. Let me start by saying that I have lupus, and while having flares, I tend to sleep and nap more often. This day I was feeling pretty beat and decided to take a nap. I'm one of those people that takes forever to fall asleep. Every noise wakes me up. As I was lying in bed, I hear footsteps from the front door, down the hallway, and into my room. I still had my eyes closed, thinking it was my significant other. There were sounds of fumbling around for something, and suddenly, there was a weight on the end of the bed as if someone had sat down. Again, without opening my eyes, I said, "Hey, babes." No response, and the weight lifts. I opened my eyes and no one was there. I jumped up, searched the apartment, and nothing. This happened a total of 3 times. I ignored it after the first. Soon after, I started hearing voices calling me and my son's voices calling for me when no one was home. My 19-year-old was with me one day while his brother was at school, and we both heard his voice calling out, "Mom." Both of my kids have heard voices mimicking myself or his brother. And about a year ago, my son, who's 19, came home describing a haunted building that he had found with his friends. Against my better judgment, I went to check it out with him and his friends. The place is very run down and not at all safe for the public. It's been boarded up exceedingly well by the owner now. I have seen and heard things before and feel like I have a good sense for negative energy. And this place had a sort of magnetic energy to it. It draws you. It still draws me. The first floor was creepy, but the basement felt like a whole different world, split into many different rooms. The worst of which was a room with a deep pool of water in it. While we were in this room, a smoke appeared near my face. I thought it was cigarette smoke, and I told my son and his friends to put out their cigarettes, but they weren't smoking. We recorded disembodied voices, many telling us to leave or run. We would always leave with a sense of panic, many times with flashlights that suddenly refused to work and videos of orbs. There was always something new that you could find going through the pictures and the footage. 4 of us had nightmares about the place. 1 refused to go back. One day it was boarded up so well that we couldn't get back in, and this was a blessing because it still calls to me. Things inside my home have dropped off slightly ever since, and we stopped going. But there are still voices and footsteps, loud bangs and sometimes even scratches. Our luck's taken a turn for the worse. My sons are depressed. I worry that we're in deep shit with something bigger than us.